Hello, my fellow OSATers. It's lovely to be back with you again. And if you are a first-time visitor to my podcast and you have no idea what that phrase means, then all will be explained later on, or perhaps by digging around in the notes underneath this video. Welcome back to everybody else, and welcome to new listeners. My name is Nathan, known as Sockmatician. You can find me on Ravelry, Instagram, Twitter, and here on YouTube as Sockmatician. I have my own group on Ravelry, so please head over there, join the group, start chatting in the forums, and having some Sockmatician fun. So how have you been? It feels like ages since I last podcasted, although I'm on a regular schedule. I wasn't sure when I began this little odyssey whether or not I would be able to keep up to a regular schedule, but so far I've been doing it. It's Wednesday, it's the 15th of April. I've just finished my last morning of teaching my students at the drama academy that I work at in Angel in North London. It's really quite sad, actually. I'm not sure that they think it's particularly sad. That sounds like they hate my classes. I'm sure they don't, at least I hope they don't. We do have some fun. I teach a subject called ATS. It's shortened to ATS on the timetable. What it actually means is acting through song. And to my mind, the art of acting through song is just what you do when you're performing a song. But I remember being their age, and I remember we had a class, a similar sort of content, but we called it presentation when I was at drama college. And it was about standing up in front of a panel of people, singing your song and then getting feedback on it. And sometimes that's quite difficult because the feedback isn't necessarily always positive. We're not there to massage people's egos, we're there to help. So when I teach ATS, I try to be very inspiring, but I also try to be quite down the line and straightforward. I'm glad to say that all of my students have really come on since I first met them just over a year ago. They're just finishing their second year now and about to start onto their third year projects next year. And my time with them has come to an end. They go into mostly shows. So I did feel a little bit of a pang of, oh, my babies are flying the nest. And I hope that's true. I genuinely hope that they are successful in their chosen careers. Lord knows, I know from bitter experience and personal experience, and not always bitter, that being an actor is not an easy path. There's a lot of... Well, there can be a lot of negativity involved. You get told no quite a lot, but actually, when you get told yes, it's so amazing, it makes up for it. So how about you? What have you been doing? Are you well? Are you knitting well? Have you missed me? I genuinely have missed you guys. It feels like a lot longer than 2 weeks. And as I said, I wasn't sure whether or not I would actually be able to stick to a rigid schedule, but so far, so good. So 2-weekly schedule seems to be where it's at. Podcasting takes a little bit of time to prepare. That's not a whinge at all. I'm really enjoying doing it, but I'm not sure I'd be able to do it more often than I am currently. It's probably quite a good thing. My podcasts tend to be quite long, don't they? On that note, I did have a comment from somebody, and actually she was very kind. She took it off public forums and she sent me a private message. And because of that, I'm not going to name names. Not that this is a bad thing at all. She was actually quite complimentary about my podcast, about my style, and some of the things that I've knitted, which is all very nice, and genuinely, I very much appreciate that. But she did say she felt that my last episode was running a little long, and that she actually walked away from her iPad several times while watching it. Now, at first, I wasn't quite sure how to take this. I had to really think about it quite objectively. I'm an actor, I am sensitive to criticism, but the overall tone of her message was very, very positive, so I assume that she meant it in a very constructive way. But I would like to... I have answered her personally, but if anyone else is thinking the same thing, when I'm watching podcasts, I do actually like longer ones than shorter ones, and I do quite like the idea that I can just switch it on and sit and knit and have someone burble on at me the way I burble on at you guys, and not have to worry about it coming to an end. And I quite like it when people go off on crazy tangents, and the podcasts I tend to enjoy are the ones where it's not just about knitting. I love all the knitting content, and I do look forward to that when I'm watching somebody else. But I do also find that I like to see a little bit more about the person and get to know them and feel that I'm really making a connection. I love Darren and Amy on the Knitting in Circles podcasts when they talk about their birds and the other things they do in their life, the hiking and things like that. And with the Bakery Bears, all their fantastic excursions that we get a sneaky preview into as well. All of that delights me, and I would like to go a little bit further down that route. So there will be, obviously, knitting content, but there will be other stuff as well. And what I've been doing is I've been making sure that in the thread for each of my episodes on my group on the Ravelry, there are timings for the different sections, sort of minutes and seconds. So if anyone isn't interested in all that kind of stuff and just wants to get on with the knitting, head over to Ravelry, look at the group, and you'll be able to see which part of the podcast you can jump to. So I will be going on a little bit longer than some. I don't want it to be epic podcast, so rest assured it will hopefully never be that. But that's my plan. It's because I'm following in the paths of the people that I enjoy watching, so I hope that's enough of a reason why. So what have I been doing? It's been an incredibly busy time since I last saw you. There have been 2 weekends since I last recorded, and the first of those was really, really lovely. Ben and I have been incredibly busy, and we've been away both weekends. I feel I haven't stopped. I feel I haven't had a rest for about 4 weeks. I haven't had a day off, certainly. I think I get one on Sunday this weekend, and I'm really looking forward to it. We went up to Llandudno in North Wales to spend the weekend with Ben's family, and for a very, very lovely reason. For anyone who has managed to see my wedding film, it will come as no surprise to people that Ben is one of 3 gay brothers, and one full brother and one half brother, and Ben himself. And it was Tim, his half brother. It was his wedding to his partner of about 8 years, I think, John. And we went up to Llandudno in North Wales to spend the weekend at a really amazing cottage. It's kind of part of a manor in a place called Rowen, R-O-W-E-N, which doesn't sound particularly Welsh. But it's right on the northeastern tip towards Anglesey, near CONWY, if anyone knows CONWY Castle. And it really was... It was just delightful. I mean, the weather was it was okay. We had some lovely sun on the day. Thankfully, everything shone down well. But it was a very, very special occasion. It's the first time I've been to a same-sex wedding since my own, and I hadn't been to one before. And I've been to precious few civil partnerships as well. So for me and Ben, it was a really sort of nostalgic reminder of what we had been doing a year before. And there were things that really hit home as well. What I really enjoyed was hearing the registrar say the words, "Marriage according to the law of this country is the union of 2 people." That's new. It always used to say, marriage according to the law of this land, of this country, is the union of 1 man and 1 woman. And since the same-sex marriage bill came into effect, that has no longer been the case, and those words have had to change. And for me, that was a real sense of pride because of what we did in the lead up to and over the days when same-sex marriage became legal in England and Wales, and this one was happening in Wales. That was really, really special. That resonated quite strongly with me. Where we were staying, wow. It's a little manor house in Rowen, as I said. Rowen is this tiny little village in the middle of nowhere. It's basically just one street with a little stream running through it and a pub and a telephone box that used to be a telephone box and is now an information centre. But it's absolutely beautiful, and you drive down this very, very long, sort of 1.5 mile driveway to get to the house itself. And there's the big manor house and 3 little cottages attached to the side, and we had one of the little cottages. There was me and Ben his mum and dad, and his other brother, Edward, and his partner, Sasha. And we stayed for 2 nights there, from the Friday to the Sunday, and it was just charming and delightful. Sheep farm, in the middle of a sheep farm, which for me as a knitter was really fascinating. These sheep looked like no sheep I'd ever seen before. It was lambing season, and there was one field where every single mother had a set of twins, and they were just adorable. And sometimes they'd all sort of frolic together and come together in great big lumps of sheep and running around the field. And it was just so delightful to see them. They were really, really tiny. But they looked like no sheep I'd ever seen. I usually imagine that sheep are this kind of clumpy things with big sort of, you know how the wool just goes. These had sort of long, straight wool, and their fleece looked like it was very, very long indeed. And I got some. I pulled some off a fence. I was going to show it to you. It's not in the room, I just realised. But the fiber's probably about this long and very, very straight and very much in a line with each other. It looks like it doesn't need any brushing or carding at all if I wanted to spin it. And it's very, very white. But the interesting thing about these lambs, most of them, not all, but most of them, had little brown splodges across the collar, just across here, sort of slightly down the back, although they were white. So if anybody recognises my description of them and knows what type of sheep they are, I did ask, and the nice lady who runs the manor house didn't know. She said she was going to ask the farmer because it'd be useful information to pass on to people, but too late for us. And there was a cat living in this farm. Now, you think of a farm cat as maybe a tabby or a tortoise shell, some kind of moggy cat that's kind of a little bit rough around the edges and you know, a little bit, I hesitate to say, hard to kill. I don't mean, sometimes the words make sense in my head, and it's only when I hear them that I realise what it sounds like. And I didn't mean hard to kill, but I mean it would survive anything because it's a hardy outdoor cat. That's what I meant. Well, Marlowe was like no cat I've ever seen. He was Persian, the most enormously long hair, huge, and he sort of walked very, very low to the ground. Excuse me, and had grey and white fur, pushed in face the way Persian cats often do, and was just always outdoors. This is the kind of cat you would normally expect to see sitting on a velvet cushion being combed all day indoors, never seeing it in the outside world at all. But apparently Marlowe will sometimes follow guests at the cottages a mile and a half into the village to go to the pub and sit outside and wait for them, and when they come out he'll follow them all the way back. He's absolutely delightful and really eccentric. So we had an amazing time there, and it was Easter weekend as well, so there was enormous amounts of chocolate. And the wedding itself was just delightful. It was held at the Llandudno Town Hall, and we went along, and it was a very small wedding party. There were just 14 of us in the group, including the 2 grooms, so the 2 of them and 12 guests. A mixture of Ben's family and my family, and it's really, really fascinating when you have such a small group of people to see how they interact with each other, because of course there's no, in bigger environments people tend to sit with the people that are on their table and they just stay with those people and chat. But actually in a small group like that, everybody mucks in, and there were people there I did know, clearly Ben's family, but John's side of things I didn't know at all, and it was really nice to get to know them as well. We had a really, really wonderful time. The next day, Easter Sunday itself, we drove into CONWY, to CONWY Castle, which is amazing, and I've got a little video clip that I filmed at the time just to show you a little bit about it. Here it is. CROESO CONWY. Welcome to CONWY, the magnificent medieval walled town in northern Wales. We're here on the highest part of the battlements. The views panoramic here are amazing. Over there you can see the castle of CONWY itself. the town behind me with the harbour and the marina. Over here you can see this line of turrets extending all the way down to the water. It's magnificent. The walls and the castle were built in the 1280s and have stood the test of time, keeping out those pesky Welsh when the British wanted to protect this part of the coastline so that they had access to trade routes to Ireland. Here's where they house the portcullis for the city gates. Looking down from above, you can see all the traffic going through underneath, and at the side of the walls here, the grooves where the portcullis would have run up and down. Behind me is the church of Llangelynnin, I think is the pronunciation. I'm not entirely sure with my Welsh. It dates back to the 12th century and is one of the earliest known churches in the whole of Wales. It was in use until the 18th century in regular worship. And they still have occasional ceremonies here and services, I think twice a month throughout 3 months of the year. So it is still not exactly thriving, but still part of the community and well worth making the trek up here. You can see behind me that the moorlands behind are absolutely beautiful, well worth walking up the few miles it took us to get here from Conwy. Incidentally, we didn't walk up from Conwy, we drove. There's a car park just behind me and it made the journey a lot easier, but the view from the top is still just as spectacular. Now I have no idea how that's going to edit in, how it's going to look, because I haven't done all of that yet. I just sat there waiting for a few seconds as an edit point, but I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it edited well. So we had an amazing time, and it was a real treat and a pleasure to be there at Tim's wedding and share his and John's special day. Last weekend, now this all ties in very nicely with, I've done it again, I do this every time. This is the third podcast in a row that I want to mention a particular piece of knitting, and it's always sitting over there. I'll get it in a minute, I'm so sorry. Last weekend, Ben and I, this very much does tie in with knitting, so if you're trying to skip ahead, watch this bit. We went over to northern France, where we've been twice before, to visit the World War I grave sites, the cemeteries set up by the Commonwealth War Graves Commission, and these were the visits that inspired my Remember Cowl. It's time for me to get it. Hold that. Obviously, I talked about this cowl quite a lot. It was the subject of my giveaway, and I gave the results of that last time we chatted. What I planned to do didn't go so well. What I planned to do was go to France and take this back to the place of its inspiration, and I was going to film quite a lengthy section of the podcast while I was there, and in all the different places, so I could share with you some of the things that we saw and did while we were there. I didn't go according to plan in that, I left this at home. I was so cross. I was really, genuinely very cross. Left this at home. And B, we stayed the night before at my friends Julie and Sam's house, the people who bullied me into knitting. You'll hear a lot about them over the podcast, I'm sure. These are people we go crafting and caking with once a month. And they were coming with us to France. They live in South London, so it was easier to get from their house down to Dover to catch the ferry than it is to get from my house, which is in North London, because we were leaving very, very early. So we stayed over at theirs, had everything with us apart from this. But I thought, it's okay, I've still got my phone, I can still film sections of the podcast. And we were driving down to Dover, and I wanted to check something on the route or something. I was driving, so if you're listening, any policemen, it was the briefest moment. I thought I could just have a quick look at my phone. I often have it between my legs on my lap when I'm driving. It wasn't there, so I rummaged around in my bag. Couldn't find it. So there I was thinking, well, I know I had it at Julie's house because I plugged it in, and I remember unplugging it this morning, and I've even packed the charger. But what I didn't have was the telephone, so I must have left it at Julie's. Spent the whole time not really needing a phone. I had Ben there, and we had all our friends were there, and other people had phones if we wanted communication. I did have my iPad for map reading and stuff, so I wasn't completely out of touch. But I thought, well, I had to let it go. There it is, that's the podcast filming out the window. I can't do it. I don't have the car, and I don't have the phone. When we got back and got to Julie's house, we drove to Julie's house especially so I could pick up my phone. It wasn't there. Slight panic setting in. It had been in the car all the time. Oh, proper facepalm moment. So although I didn't have the cowl, it had just fallen down the side of the driver's seat. It was there all the time. What are you going to do? These things happen. So while we were there were 8 of us. We went down in two carloads, and Ben and I, as I said, have been there twice before, but we wanted to share this with our friends, Sam and Julie, and our friends Abby and Meriel and Hilary, and who else was there? Abby, Meriel, Hilary, Julie, Sam. Oh, Sam's partner, Matt. So we all went down in convoy in 2 cars, and it really is, if you've never done it, it really is quite an extraordinary thing. It's so moving and so powerful, and I urge everyone to go. We went to near Albert, which is right in the heart of the Somme region, for the infamous Battle of the Somme, the first day of which was the 1st of July 1916. And it's so powerfully moving. The reason why we originally went to that particular place was because we were researching the Leeds PALs, which was one of Kitchener's PALs battalions that fought together in the First World War from Leeds in northern England, and that's the story that Ben was telling in the musical that he wrote for the National Youth Music Theatre last year, which won the Best Musical Production in 2014 at the UK Theatre Awards. Amazing. You probably know all this already because I'm sure I've discussed it in the past, but just to catch people up and bring them up to speed. So we were there for that reason. So the whole idea of the Leeds Pals was still very close to us, and we wanted to share what we knew. Now, there are a couple of things that happened to us the first 2 times we went down there, and we had told people about them. We were hoping they would happen again. Because they'd happened twice, we thought there's a good chance. There's some quite lively characters in the area, and there are 4 or 5 cemeteries at Serres-les-Puisieux, which is a little village just near where the Leeds Pals went over the top. And that's where a lot of them are buried, because part of the Commonwealth War Graves Commission's tenet was to rebury the men where they had fallen. So you see these lines and lines of identical graves, but you get close and they all have a carved insignia towards the top, and that would be the regiment's badge, so what was on their cap badge, denoting which regiment they were from. The Leeds Pals were from the West Yorkshire Regiment. And then it would, if known, it would have their name and their rank and a cross. And it's sometimes they don't know the name. Sometimes they found the remains of a soldier who they can't identify, and it'll just say a soldier of the Great War, known unto God. And for me, that's incredibly upsetting and powerful. It's really hard to imagine not knowing who this person was, knowing this person had a life, a family, a future that was taken away from them, and all of it wiped out because we have no idea how to identify those people. So those things are very powerfully moving. But at the main cemetery. One of them is right next to a farm. And the first time we went, it was just me and Ben and his parents. And the farmer came out. It's not an area where many people speak a great deal of English, and our French, within the four of us, was pretty poor. But he came out and, bonjour, and we said bonjour, and vous êtes English? Kind of a mixture of French and English going on. And we said, yes, we're English, thinking maybe he speaks English. His next question was, do you know Judi Dench? We weren't quite sure how to answer, thinking, does he mean do we know who she is, or do we know her personally? So we said, well, we know Judi Dench. It turns out that he was very proud of the fact that Judi Dench once filmed a movie in and around this area, possibly at this. I don't know the details because I don't speak enough French and he didn't speak enough English, but he's very proud of that. So the second time we went, which was almost exactly a year ago, just after our wedding, we went along with the choreographer and the director of Ben's musical Brass, because they were just about to go to rehearsals and they wanted to immerse themselves in it. So we went down there, and Sarah Kesselman, who's the director, is a very fine English actress who has won Olivier Awards, and she acted alongside Laurence Olivier. She's 70 now. She's very, very elegant and sophisticated lady. She's wonderful. And she's worked with pretty much everybody. When we arrived at this cemetery on our second visit, the same farmer came out. Vous êtes English? Oui. Do you know Judi Dench? And this time, it just so happens that Sarah does. I'm not sure we managed to convey to the farmer that the answer genuinely was yes. Sarah has worked with everybody, and I forget the name of the production, or I don't know if it's TV or theatre, but she has worked with Judi Dench, so she was able to quite truthfully say, yes, I do. Anyway, we had told our friends all of these anecdotes, and lo and behold, as we turned up at Sayre Cemetery number 2, the farmer, no sooner had we come out of our car, the farmer arrived from his driveway. Vous êtes English? Do you know Judi Dench? Well, he clearly says it to everybody. He didn't recognise us. And I was just giggling. I was a wreck, because we told people about it and we were sort of hoping it would happen, but didn't really expect a third time that it would be the case, but it genuinely was. That aside, at this point the weather was pretty terrible. We got caught in a rain squall that was horizontal rain. It was literally, we got drenched. So we didn't spend a great deal of time there that evening. But we did find the people that we wanted to show to our friends, and one of them was the gravestone of a young lad called Horace Isles, who was one of the Leeds Pals, and Ben has a book of the Leeds Pals, and it has their names in and various anecdotes about the people, and we were able to find many of their gravestones, which was kind of weird, knowing a little bit about them and then just seeing their gravestones among the masses of others. And Horace Isles was the youngest of the Leeds Pals to die on the first day of July in the Battle of the Somme. He was 16 when he died, and even though it was illegal to sign up for the army under the age of 18, many young kids did, and I have no doubt that their superior officers were turning a blind eye, knowing full well that they were underage. Horace signed up when he was just 14 years old, and his sister wrote a letter to him pleading with him to tell his superiors that he was only 16, and unfortunately her letter arrived a little bit too late, and it was just returned to her unopened with the words "lost in action" written on it. Had she managed to get through in time, and had he said to them, they would have had to send him home, but not to be. Horace became one of the characters in Ben's musical Brass. Horace became Maury, and his story developed in a slightly different way, but he was still an underage soldier, so that's Ben's tribute to him. And we've moved from there to the memorial at Thiepval, which is the memorial to the missing of the Somme. And it really is quite an imposing structure. It's designed by Lutyens, who designed the cenotaph here in Whitehall in London, just opposite the end of Downing Street. And it's colossal, it's absolutely colossal, and it's dedicated to the missing of the Somme. So these are the people whose bodies were never found, or at least never identified, and there are 72,000 names carved into the pillars of this enormous great big monument. Devastating stuff. We had a wonderful time while we were there doing all sorts of other things. The other fantastic thing that did happen to us was another of these things that we were hoping, fingers crossed. The first time we were there, Ben and I went off on our own one night to Bus-les-Artois, which is a small village where the Leeds Pals were billeted, which means where they were staying in barns and haylofts while they were not on the front. So they do a week in the trenches and a week off, a week in the trenches, that kind of rotation. And we were looking around the church. We went to Bus because there is a memorial. It's the only memorial specifically for the Leeds Pals, and we wanted to see that. And while we were there, we didn't know where it was. We thought maybe it was in the grounds of the church. Seemed like a good place to start. And a gentleman came out of the house just opposite and came towards us. Bonsoir. So we thought, are we going to be in trouble for trespassing? We didn't know what the rules were. So we said, bonsoir, big smiles. He didn't speak any English at all, but I managed to say to him, we were looking for the memorial for the Leeds Pals. And when we said the words Leeds Pals, his face lit up. And he beckoned us into his house and threw out the back into a garden where he has a shed, an outhouse really, which is the most extraordinary collection that he's amassed over years. He works as a farmer, but also he works as a gardener for the Commonwealth War Graves Commission, and things that he's dug up from the fields himself, or things that the Leeds Pals left behind in Bus, he's managed to collect. And it's this, every square centimetre is completely crammed with different things: cups, biscuit tins, rifles, parts of aircraft, tools, musical instruments, which of course Ben was agog at because he was writing the story about a brass band, and there was a cornet and a trumpet which had been owned by the Leeds Pals themselves, which Ben hadn't known about. It was amazing. He also found this tiny little doll's tea set, tiny miniature thing. Such an unusual thing for a soldier to have owned that Ben thought it could only have been bought as a gift, probably to send home to the loved ones. So maybe he had a wife and a small child at home, and that became a prominent story strand in Ben's musical. So we had a lot to thank this gentleman for, and when we went back the next year, he came out again and invited us all back into his museum. So we were thinking, fingers crossed, fingers crossed. More so than that, we wanted to thank him. Ben was so grateful to him for the inspiration that he'd given to Ben for the writing of the show, that he thanked him in print in the programme. This man's name is Lobel Gislen, and Lobel is such an unusual name, Lobel, I love it, Lobel Gislen. And Ben put him in the thanks in the programme, and we'd taken a copy of the programme over with us to give to him should we have seen him. And thankfully, one of our party, Julie, is a brilliant French speaker, so we thought, well, at least she can explain why we're doing this. As we arrived, we walked into the church, and he opened his door and came out, and I could not have been more pleased. So Julie went straight over, introduced herself, and he invited us to his museum, so everyone got to see it. It was amazing. He also took us into the barn, which is the building next door to where he lives, where the Leeds Pals actually lived and slept and played and watched Charlie Chaplin films on projectors, and it was amazing, absolutely amazing. So basically that's what I've been doing. We crammed so much into our time away. We drove down on the Saturday morning and came back Sunday night, ferry crossing both ways. And that was our time in Albert. But what we did on the way back, we didn't drive straight up to Calais. We took a stop in a place called Hazebrook, which is probably fairly near the Belgian border, I think. And the reason why we were there is because Sam knew that his great uncle, his grandfather's brother, had fought in the First World War and was buried at Hazebrook, and he'd never been. Well, we found him. That was moving. That really, really was moving. Just knowing that Sam was standing there, and just a couple of feet underneath him were the remains of a man with the same DNA, the same strands of family running through him, and so close as well. This was his great uncle. I'm a great uncle, I have a great niece, and I have to think how close I am in relationship to her. It was mind-blowing. We had an amazing time. And we were actually only in France for 33 and a half hours, and we did so much. We did so much. Anyway. Oh, one more thing. Who'd have thought it? And I know this is... I keep mentioning my wedding, but it is quite a special thing to me, so I'm not going to apologise for it. But here's another reason why I don't feel at all upset about mentioning my wedding. It's another excuse. We found out last week we've been nominated for a BAFTA. Now, you've all met John Grierson, sitting just here, which was an amazing achievement. We were delighted to win this Grierson Award, and we've been nominated for several other awards as well. But really, kind of the BAFTA's the big one. It's kind of the biggest we've got. You know, you Americans have Oscars. We have BAFTAs. We're up for Best Specialist Factual Programme, and we are in exquisitely highfalutin company. We're up against Grayson Perry. Now, if you've watched my podcast before, you'll know that we were also up against Grayson Perry for the which were the Royal Television Society Award, and we didn't win. He won, and he should have done. It was great. Being up against him again kind of feels a little bit... I don't think for a second we're going to win. We're really not. We're up against David Attenborough's documentary about Conquest of the Skies, and which was amazing, and a First World War documentary, which was a huge budget thing. I mean, that's it. There's 4 nominations for Best Specialist Factual, which is such a broad category. We're incredibly proud. We don't expect to win, but we are incredibly proud to be nominated. It's quite a special thing. So thank you, BAFTA, and thank you for caring. I'm getting over a chest infection. This is the 4th week, so I'm hoping it's on its way out now. I've been really, really poorly, and my voice is a little bit hoarse, so I apologise for that. Here we are at the community section of the podcast. I've said before, I'll say again, thank you to everyone who has subscribed. If you haven't done, just click subscribe below, or up there somewhere, I'm not sure where it is on the YouTube page. Subscribe to this, come over and join my Ravelry group. I am loving the interaction that's happening. My Ravelry group has become a really sociable place, and that's exactly what I wanted, so please keep it coming. I've got a thread there for finished objects of some of my patterns, and people are starting to upload photographs there, so if you've made anything of mine in the past and you have photographs of it, then please share. I'd be really, really excited to see them. I love seeing what people do with colour choices, because of course I know so well what was in my head when I was thinking of it and knitting it, but it's so amazing to see what other choices people come up with. So chat, ask questions, it's all there for the doing. There's quite a few people who are podcasters themselves who have been mentioning this podcast, which is so kind. Thank you. And people have been saying such lovely, lovely things. There may be people out there who are saying, oh, I've watched this podcast about this, such boring, went on for hours, I hated it, it's rubbish. I really don't want to know. But it is always nice to hear when people say nice things about you, so I'll blush and very gratefully take the compliments. Thank you very much. There's a couple that I want to mention that I've seen in this last week or so. There's Love Knots, who is Rachel in America. Love Knots, Luvknotz. She also has an Etsy shop, I believe, I think by the same name. She's great fun. She's feisty, and I really I've only seen the one episode. I really enjoyed. She talked about my podcast, and I really enjoyed hers as well. It'd be interesting to see where she goes with it. She's a dyer and a spinner, and does some lovely things with her own hand-spun stuff. Yeah, she's great, check her out. But she was asking her favourite podcast, I'm looking down because my iPad's down here, is there anything I can't get enough of making as far as knitting is concerned? Well, I mean, you know I'm an obsessive DKer, as in double knitting, technique, not yarn weight. And as my name would suggest, socks. But in terms of is there something that I've made several times, not really. I don't tend to repeat patterns. As you'll know, I'm making my second Greek Fire by Josh Ricks, because one of them got left on a train. letting it go. I'm like Princess Anna, or the other one. Alphaba, might as well be. Adina Menzel sang it. Let it go, let it go. I'm letting it go just really, really slowly. So I knitted that twice. The only thing I've knitted several times really was one of my own patterns called the Ice Anchor. And it's a little stranded iPhone cozy based on the square patterns from the Sanka knitting tradition. And I knitted 3 of those, partly because they were only small, partly because, actually no, I knitted 4 of them. One for me, one for Ben, one for his mum, and one for my sister. So I wanted to show them in a different variety of colours, and the pattern comes with lots of different designs that you can mix and match to get your own version. So it's quite customable, and I wanted to show in photographs, so I knitted several of those. So I guess it's not that I can't get enough of it, I just needed to with that one. But I get generally socks and anything double knitting. What I haven't done is combine the two and come up with some nice double knitting patterns for socks. I will. Watch this space. So thank you, Rachel, for that. Another one. I love international podcasts. When I say international, I sort of, is this just me? Is this a stupid thing? I don't really think of American podcasts as international. I know it's a long way away and you have to cross an ocean to get there. But I think it's because English being the first language for both countries doesn't make it feel quite so different. There's so many crossovers in culture between, certainly popular culture between America and England, that I feel a kinship, perhaps. But I do enjoy the idea that knitting, what's the phrase I'm looking for? It kind of transcends language, and the internet and the knitting community can bind people together from places who they wouldn't necessarily be able to communicate or find or reach each other. And there's a podcast from a young lady called Dani Kristinsdottir from Iceland. And she was also very kind about my podcast too, so I wanted to mention her. I think she's Dani Kristins on YouTube, Dagny Kristins, but her full name is Kristinsdottir. For those people who don't know, they have a patrilineal, or sometimes I guess matrilineal, naming tradition in Iceland. They don't have a family name that gets passed down from generation to generation that we do. They take their parents' name and put, and if you're a boy and your son and your father is called Jon, I would be called Jonsson. But if you're a girl, I'd be Jonsdottir, which means John's daughter. I'm assuming this is the same for Kristinsdottir. The reason I know this is because I have some Icelandic friends. And my friend Þórna, known to me as Kristen, as she was an actress in this country before moving back to Iceland, and she used her middle name. So her real name, I knew it was Kristen Johnson, but her real name is Þórna Kristin Jonsdottir, which I think is beautiful. And she now goes by Þórna. And she keeps begging me and Ben to come over and spend time with her in Iceland. And I am desperate to. I love the volcanic nature of it. I love the idea of long days in the summer, so it's white nights and things. Northern Lights. Oh, I'm so desperate, and Ben is as well, to see the Northern Lights for real. It's just time. It is just time. We will go, and perhaps we'll go this summer. I don't know. This is a vague plan that's formulating. So Dani, it's lovely to chat to you via the medium of our shared podcasting, and if anyone's interested, pop over there and check out her podcast. Bringing me back to one of my favourite podcasts. You know, I have a bit of a soft spot for Elizabeth Green Musselman of Dark Matter Knits. She and I wish we could be closer geographically, because I know we'd be friends. And she asked me a question very directly on her last podcast. And the question was this: what yarn in my stash best describes me? Wow. And then she said that might be a little bit tricky. So she said, well, perhaps, or says something interesting about me. Well, challenge on, Green Musselman. I put the same question to my husband. He's not a knitter. And I just showed her, I opened the 2 boxes that I have for my stash, and I said, here's the question, I don't really know how to answer it, over to you. So, Elizabeth, I'm sorry if I've taken away the responsibility, but Ben's answer was actually really, really good. Had it been rubbish, I might have ignored it completely. But it turns out that he came up with something really good. He delved in, and I've got quite a lot of sock yarn. Mostly sock yarn makes up the bulk of my stash, but some other things as well. But he went in, and he came out with not a full stash, but a partially used stash, and it was this. It's lovely. It's Wollmeise Pure in the colourway Campari Orange. Now, the story behind this, let me bring it a little bit closer so you can see all these wonderful oranges and yellows and reds coming together, this real sense of fire and flame. And in the traditional Wollmeise way, can you see how, try and get it to focus, the plying of Wollmeise yarn, it's not like a normal, I can't do it, it's not going to focus, but it's lots and lots of tiny little strands around each other. So it's very smooth yarn. It can be a little bit splitty when you're working with it, but it's very smooth textured yarn. So I said to Ben, why? This is, you may recognise it, this is the yarn that I knitted my Genesis double knitted shawl with, the enormous green and orange shawl. This is the orange. And I love my husband. He said, because he bought me this and the other colourway as a birthday present. This is Die Auster in the same yarn base. He bought them for me, and I decided to put them together because I think they worked really nicely. And I made the shawl, but I only had one skein of each, and I knew I'd need a lot more, and particularly as the shawl started to grow, I was like, oh, I really need to make sure I get some more. And it was a discontinued colourway. So I went to great lengths to track down 2 extra skeins of each colour, so I would have 3 of each. And I used the Ravelry destash options, and I found people who had some for sale and contacted them, and probably paid quite a lot more in shipping than I should have done, but it was really important and I wanted to use these colours. So I managed to get, one came from Wisconsin in America, one came from Norway, one came from Wiltshire in England, one from somewhere else, I forget where. But literally, the yarn came to me, I managed to track them down, and people were very gracious, and I paid them via PayPal, and they sent them to me from all over the world. And the reason why Ben chose this was, A, because he chose it, because he felt that the colours, being so bright, not recommend, what's the word I'm trying to, brain dead, it's been a long day, I got up really early this morning, represent what he considers to be one of my most attractive traits, which is my optimism for life. I do get quite excited about little things. But also the fact that I went on such a quest to get it. When I get something, when I get the bit between my teeth about something, I just keep going. Anyway, that's why he chose that. And I think it was really, really sweet of him, and it is lovely. And he also he loves the colours so much, and he loves me. So, Elizabeth, I hope that's a satisfactory answer. I would like to turn the question round onto you as well and say, what yarn in your stash best represents you, but from the point of view of not just colours you like. Go into a little bit more detail. Go a little bit of a backstory. That's what I want. That's what I like. Challenge on. Also, chatting about me with Josh Brown, Auricula82, who's Dairyland Knits in Wisconsin. Josh, I love you. Every time I watch your podcast, I can't get enough. Your zest for life, your enthusiasm about your crafting and your plants just overwhelms me, and you are such a delight. You and me and Elizabeth should all get together, and I reckon we would have the best tea parties. We would have so much fun. I adore you. Josh has bought a copy of the Remember Cowl. I happened to notice, I recognised his name when it came through from PayPal, and he was talking about it. In fact, his latest episode is called Remembering. He wasn't talking about the cowl so much, but what it had inspired. Now, people remember that I wanted people to think of who they wanted to remember while they knit it or wear it. And that got Josh thinking, and he started talking at some length. He apologised for it, but Josh, don't apologise. He talked at some length about his grandmother who had inspired so much in his life. And he talked about how she lived with him and she reached a very ripe old age, and how the family became carers for her. And it was so touching. Oh, I was filling up, absolutely filling up. It was beautiful. So again, Josh, thank you for mentioning my podcast. But everyone who hasn't seen Josh's, go over Auricula82 Dairyland Knits. Lovely, and you really can sing. I hope he knows what I mean. Anyone who's watched it will know what I mean. I had a question from now the lady's name is, I believe, Sandra, but her Google name, this came from YouTube, is Chris WYF 2011, and she was talking about how my enthusiasm for double knitting has inspired her to want to try it herself, but she has a love of a particular type of niche knitting as well, which is brioche knitting, and she was asking, have I tried it, and am I planning to do any designs for it? Well, interesting you should say. No, I haven't. I am incredibly keen to. I know Stephen West is all about the brioche this year. He calls it the stitch of 2015. I love the idea of it. I think it looks a little bit labour intensive, and for me as a double knitter that's saying something. But I need to look into this a bit further, but I have been looking into the double Dutch method of brioche knitting, which I think creates exactly the same end product, but you work both passes of a row with the two yarns at the same time, rather than working across with one and then the other going across the same row twice. I think I would probably prefer that. That would be sort of more akin to what I'm used to with double knitting. So I haven't. I know I'll love it because I love what it can produce, and I think it will get my creative juices going. So watch this space. Oh, I would like to start a strand of this podcast called Stuff for the Boys. Now, this is in no way meant to be excluding for my female watchers. You know I love you. But of course, me being a male knitter and a male designer, I am always looking for stuff out there that appeals to men. And when I say stuff for the boys, what I'm interested in is stuff that's not knitting patterns per se. There's not enough, but there are quite a lot of male knitting patterns out there, or things that appeal to men knitters and to male wearers of knitwear. What I mean is other things to do with knitting, so project bags or stitch markers or anything you can think of that goes along with the idea of equipment for knitting that is aimed at or might appeal more to men or male knitters. And this was sparked off by a communication I had from, he's changed his Ravelry name. He was House of William last week when he received a Remember Cowl pattern in the giveaway. He's now Mindful William. So William, hello. He sent me a message with a project bag on it from a friend, someone he's dealt with. So anyway, I'm rambling because I'm trying to get it up on screen here. But he said, this is a really boyish thing, isn't it great? There's boyish stuff out there. And he's right, it is great. So this is a bag sewn by Lindsay, who has an Etsy shop. So sorry, the phlegm is shifting and it's got to go somewhere. Phlegm, what a lovely word that is. Charming for podcast discussions, I apologise. Sewn by Lindsay, Lindsay, on Etsy, and she does a variety of different types of bags. I haven't looked into much of her stuff because the one that William wanted to show me is really quite lovely. It's all about locomotives and trains and travel, boy things, and he's very excited. I think he may have bought one of these himself. I love it. And I would love to see more stuff like this out there. My own project bags tend to be as masculine as I can find, but it's quite tricky. So if you know of any stuff out there, any designers who are putting stuff out there for specifically for the male market, or if you are a designer and you want to get in touch and for me to be able to showcase, because now thanks to you guys, I have well over 1,000 subscribers here. So if you feel that that might be a useful platform to share your stuff, I'll be more than happy to talk about it. So please do let me know. So that's Stuff for the Boys, and maybe I'll put a Stuff for the Boys thread on Ravelry, or maybe that would give too much of it away. Just PM me. I think that's probably easier. So that's Stuff for the Boys, and I hope to see the full range of stuff that's out there for the boys. That'd be amazing. We talked about my tattoos last time, and I did say that I would probably go into a little bit more detail about my arm full of tattoos here. There are 74 tattoos on this arm. I was born in 1974, that was very specific. So what I'd quite like to do, I really love bad puns. I really, really love bad puns. I can't help myself. So I've come up with a little title for this section of the podcast, and it's called, What's Tat? I couldn't even get through it. What's Tat? So I just want to, there's a story behind each and every one of the symbols on my arm. I did quite a lot of research into symbology, and went to lots of different cultures and philosophies and places around the world. Go there, I went there on Google. But in order to find the 74 that would eventually make up my arm, and it's the whole tattoo covers my shoulder, goes up to there. So what I'm going to do is every week, or every podcast, I'm going to choose one specifically to share with you. And this week, it's the turn of this tattoo here, this wiggly line with the 5 dots. It's the only tattoo I have on my arm that comes from the native Aboriginal culture. I had 3 rules when I was choosing tattoos for my arm, and the tattoos had to fall into all of these 3 categories. It had to be something that I felt was an attractive design to look at. It had to be something that represented something that I felt I could believe in or subscribe to or aspire to, and it had to be something that could be represented with just lines, so rather than blocks. Now, a lot of the Aboriginal symbols, they have such wonderful meanings and they're very, very attractive, but they're not just lines. So this one, it fitted the bill very nicely, and it's called the Journey Path, and it represents your journey through life's obstacles. And so the wiggly line is your life's path, and the dots are the things that you will face along the way. And that, to me, was so powerful and so wonderful, because we all live a life of tribulation. There's always going to be struggles and challenges along the way. What matters is how you navigate your way through them. And I loved it. It was actually the last of the tattoos to be put on my arm. In the second session, the tattoo artist was coming towards the end, and the picture that I'd given him was really, really small, and he said he was going to go over to his photocopier and enlarge it and stuff, and I wasn't quite sure, and I knew we had this space left for it, but I trusted him by this point, and I asked him if he'd be willing to do it freehand. I don't know if you know, but a lot of tattoos are done with a template that gets sort of made into a transfer, which gets placed onto the skin, and the artist works into that template. And that's what was done with all of my others. But I asked him, Rodrigo de Soto, and that's the artist's name, and he was doing such a brilliant, delicate job with the others that he was working on, that I said to him, would he be prepared to do it freehand? And he was a little bit nervous, I think, but was really up to the challenge, because it has to be done in one go. It has to be so there wouldn't be any bulges or splodges in the line. It had to be done very carefully. But he studied the original design that I'd given him and really got a feel for what it was about and the shape of it, and then he just went in and did it, and that's how we finished the session. And I genuinely think he did a brilliant job, and it means such a lot to me that it was the last one, and it was completely freehand, so it felt very organic and free, and I love that. So that's What's Tat. I'm going to wince every time I say that. So on to our knitting content for the day. Stash enhancement, first of all. Stash enhancement, there isn't really anything in terms of actual stash. I haven't bought any yarn. I am expecting a delivery of yarn very soon, and I'm hoping, fingers crossed, I'm hoping it'll be very soon because I'm desperate to start working on the project I've got in mind for it. More about that in a minute. But I actually don't have anything new, except in the run-up to our trip to France, Ben and I had to change the light bulb in the headlights because it had blown, and we wanted to get new windscreen wiper blades. So we took our car, not to a garage, but to a shop, Halfords, and it's in one of the Americans, you know, like a little strip mall. Apologies for the accent. It's a little retail park, and there's not only this Halfords where we got all the things done, but there's also a homeware shop, and we went in the DIY shop, and B&Q to those in England and wherever else B&Q exists, so you know. And we went in and I saw these storage boxes. Like, do you know what? I've only got one storage box for my stash, and the top doesn't close properly, and leaving it vulnerable to critters, and you know, on the off chance. And I have not a massive stash, as I've said many times before, but enough that it's more than will fit in this one box. And it's dirt cheap. So here it is. This is my stash enhancement. It's quite a large box, and it was only about £10. So it's got some cedar blocks in there and some all sorts of stuff. This is my non-sock yarn stash box. My sock yarn fits in the other one, and that's all I can show you really. I got nothing. So maybe next time I'll be able to show you some yarn, or maybe I won't be able to. I don't know, we'll see. But that's my stash enhancement. I wish there could be more because I love little fibrey things and I love playing with new stuff, but I got too much else on the go at the moment. I don't need to be buying. I know it's not about need, I get that. Stash enhancement is about, well, you know, it's just nice. You don't need more yarn. Nobody needs more yarn, but there's always room for it, right? Right? In terms of my FOs, ladies and gentlemen, FOs. I'm afraid I've got nothing. Big projects, I'm afraid. It's a lot of long-winded projects on the go, and because I've been away so much, not much knitting time. Didn't knit at all while I was in France. I did take some, but I did nothing to declare, I'm afraid. Do you know, this whole section of the podcast is slightly embarrassing because it's basically the same as it was last week. So here we go into whips straight away. Still working on the fractal scarves, which I still can't show you. Not a great deal has progressed in that department. I feel embarrassed telling you this purely because I'm worried that you're going to get bored, but I don't feel any shame about doing it because knitting's not about shame. It's a pastime, right? It's something we do for joy and for fun and for seeing something develop under the needles, and getting that finished object is lovely, but it's not the be-all and end-all, is it? It's not everything. So that's okay. So the fractal scarves are still moving on. Actually, one of them's doing quite well. The first one should be ready in a couple of weeks, if I can knuckle down and get on with that one. I'm still working on Greek Fire, as I said earlier on. I haven't done a great deal more. I did some more on it yesterday. I'm now back into the swing of where I am. It's growing. It's getting quite nice. It's I mean, it's a really, really lovely pattern. I genuinely do like it very much, which is why I don't mind knitting it a second time. But Ben, if you're in the kitchen listening, if you've got your ear pressed up against the door, if you can hear me, I do not want to knit it a third time. No offence to you, Josh, but to Ben, for reasons we all know. And the gilt socks. Well, do you know what? Where are they? They're down here. I've actually discovered a bit of a new love for my gilt socks. I know. This has come along quite recently, so there's not a huge amount of progress, but I mean, it was here last time I showed you. So this, in the last couple of evenings, I've done a wee bit more in front of the telly. I'm actually starting to really enjoy it. So here we are again. Get this stray strand out of the way. Here's what they look like. Really fun texture. And I'm starting to fall in love with them again and get into the flow of knitting them more. Because I felt they were fiddly without being brainless. They were fiddly but not hard, and easy but not brainless, if you see what I mean. All at the same time, and I was struggling with that. However, I'm really starting to enjoy it. It's a nice squishy fabric. The It's not the softest yarn in the world, but it's a good, sturdy, durable sock yarn from Fiberspace, Sheila's sock. And yeah, I'm falling in love with these again. I've discovered a couple of new heel constructions that interest me. New to me, anyway. One is called the band heel, which I'll put a link to somewhere because it's really quite fascinating. Instead of having a wide heel flap, it has a very sort of thin band of stitches that go down and wrap underneath the heel, and the edges, they wrap around this way. It looks really intriguing, and it looks like it's probably quite comfortable as well, and will snugly fit a heel. Sometimes a heel flap can be a little bit wide. Yeah, I think it'd be quite interesting. So I might actually see if I can implement that in this sock. We'll see. I guess I'm only about 1.5 inches away from starting the heel, so it will be soon. So maybe there'll be some decent progress to show on this one. But the big news is I'm falling in love with it again, and that's good. I was thinking of names. They're my gilt socks. They're going to be called gilt socks. I know this. So those are my whips. In terms of naps, well, podcast before last, I mentioned that I'd been given a load of purple alpaca yarn by Ben's mum, who we pulled it out of a jumper she was making and she'd fallen out of love with and gave it to me. And I said I would knit her a cardigan, and I found with her what I considered to be the perfect cardigan. So I'm going to try and find that now. It looks like this. It's really lovely. Lots of lace work in it. It's really nice. It will suit Ben's mum down to the ground. It'll be absolutely gorgeous. And it is called Rib and Lace Cardigan number 13 by Deborah Newton. And it was originally published in Vogue Knitting Holiday 2008. So I want to buy it. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem to be available anymore. I click on the link and it says this pattern is available for download, $6. And I click on that, it goes to a page on Vogue Knitting where it says this page cannot be found. So that upsets me a little bit. I have contacted Deborah Newton a couple of weeks ago via Ravelry. I may chase her up. I haven't heard anything back. So I don't know if the pattern is available for download or purchase. If anyone knows any information about it, or if anyone knows anyone at Vogue Knitting who can point me in the right direction where I might be able to get hold of a copy, I'd be very, very grateful. I don't want to change my mind. This is the thing. I'm a little bit OCD when it comes to this, and I don't use that term glibly the way a lot of people do. I'm aware that I genuinely have quite a lot of OCD tendencies, which don't debilitate me in any way, which is why it's not a diagnosable thing, but genuinely my brain works along these kind of things. And I relate to something that Sheldon on Big Bang Theory once said, when he said something that's out of kilter with him, it's like an itch deep in his brain that he can't scratch. Well, I totally get that. And because I've set my heart on this, I really want to make it. I love it, I think it's beautiful, and I really want to do it for Noel. So if anyone can help me with laying my hands on a copy of Deborah Newton's Rib and Lace Cardigan, I'll do it, there we are, that looks like that, number 13 from Vogue Knitting Holiday 2008, then please get in touch. I'd be very, very grateful indeed. So that's sort of a nap. I guess one of the other naps will be the third of the fractal scarves. I'm not going to start that just yet. I've got too much on the go, but I'm looking forward to that. But I do have some exciting news that I can only sort of tantalisingly tease you with. I had communication a couple of weeks ago from a knitting magazine, a publication which I can't name, saying how much they enjoyed looking at my Sanka scarf, and would I be willing to design something for an upcoming issue? Well, yes, naturally. It's quite a big deal to be asked, I think, and it made me feel very special. And so we've been in communication about this, and it is going to happen. And I'm just waiting on the arrival of the yarn for this project, which I mentioned earlier. So I can't really talk about what it is. It's going to be a large project, definitely in double knitting, and it presents many, many challenges, some of which I have yet to work out. I think I'm going to have to knit the thing and wait till I get to that point and go, oh, it needs to be this. It's sometimes hard to figure out what it is in advance, but you know what it is when it gets onto the needles. But I'm incredibly excited about it. A little bit stressed because I know it's quite a tight turnaround on the deadline, and double knitting projects do tend to take twice as long, for obvious reasons. So that will probably, as soon as that yarn comes, I'm going to have to plough myself into it 100%, and all of my other whips will just fall by the wayside for a month or so while I just knit, and it'll be late nights and early starts, and I'll be knitting furiously as much as I can in order to get it done, because there's a lot of work to be done in it. It's my own fault, it's my own design, I chose this. I've got no one to blame but myself, but that's how that will be. Now on to, that's my naps, my whips, same as ever, my naps. Can't really talk about it and can't find them, so that's really not good, is it? I offer you the promise of whips and naps and FOs. Second podcast in a row, no FOs. Third podcast in a row, all the same whips. This one, 2 naps that I can't discuss and can't knit. What's the point? I'm so sorry. I don't really care. That's just how it is. Moving on. Into my deep stash section. You remember I talked about the Mardi Gras yarn? For those who don't know, this is episode 1, I think. I've got this fantastic skein of brightly coloured yarn, and I asked people what they thought I could or should do with it, and had some really, really interesting suggestions in the thread on Ravelry. So one of the suggestions that came up several times was to use slip stitches to really let those colour variations pop. And I think that's a brilliant idea. I really think that's absolutely the way forward. I'm not sure that would have occurred to me straight away. And I really like that. So for everyone who suggested slip stitches for the Mardi Gras yarn, I think so. It's probably going to be a hat. I think it'd be a really good, fun, cool hat, maybe. I don't know, maybe some kind of cowl. I don't know. But yeah, there'll be definitely something with slip stitches in there. So well done for that. And thank you. This week's deep stash item is something that I've had for quite a long time. The very first yarn I was ever bought when I became interested in knitting, when I was purely socks, it was socks all the way and that's all I did, was a skein of Misty Alpaca. Misty Alpaca, yeah. And it's the colour, it's 50% alpaca, 30% merino, 10% silk and 10% nylon. So it's got a lovely mix of fibres in it, and the silk and the nylon give it some really good durability and a nice sheen. And I loved it, and my knit, Ben bought it for me as a birthday present, and it was my first ever design got knit with those, my socks called Cancello. Very simple, basic sock pattern, but I thought I was really clever because I'd never done it before. And I loved the yarn so much that I went out and I bought quite a lot more Misty Alpaca. It feels so unctuous and so delicious going through the fingers. There's a soft butteriness to the alpaca. I have a bit of a soft spot for alpaca. I live on a main road. Every time I'm on the phone to my mum and a siren goes past, oh, what's that? I probably haven't even heard it. You don't get sirens where she lives in the country, so something awful must be happening. Happens 10 times a day. I probably not noticed several more during the filming of this podcast. So I bought loads of Misty Alpaca, and one that I really love and haven't really found the right design, it will be socks definitely, is this. Oh, it's just so lovely. That's actually quite, the colour representation is looking a little dark on the screen, but it's actually, so I can bring it a little bit closer. There's a real depth to the colour, a little bit of it's a semi-solid. Yeah, it's a more of a turquoise than it's actually showing up. Get something white behind it. Hold on, there's something white on my iPad. Does that? No, that doesn't help. Pointless. But it's beautiful, and it's a little bit hairy, as alpaca tends to be. There we go, some hairs coming off it which you can't see. Could fall asleep on it quite happily. Maybe I don't want to knit anything at all. Maybe I'll just sort of get loads of these and line them up. They can be my pillow. I absolutely love it. There's a softness, but there's a real strength to it as well. And it's Misty Alpaca. which is Peace, Love, Alpaca, I think. Peace, Love, Alpaca. I think that's what that stands for. It's really gorgeous. This is Tonos Carnaval, so I guess that's a carnival colourway. Made in Peru for naturally hand-knit yarns. It's 100 grams, 400 metres, which is 437 yards, 4-ply. And it says 7 stitches to the inch on US 2. Well, I don't know what a US 2 is. I don't work in those, so I guess that'll be a 3.5. I don't know. Something. But I love it. So this is my deep stash. I've had it for about 4 years, and every now and then it calls to me and goes, knit me, Nathan, knit me. And I have this yearning for it. Oh no, Surf Blue, there's the colourway, Surf Blue. I don't know what Tonos Carnaval means. Surf Blue is the colourway. I love it. I will be looking forward to knitting something with it very soon. That's my deep stash for the day. Forgive me while I go off into a little bit of a reverie. I'm aware that while I'm giggling, I'm making such horrible noises with my nose. I do apologise. I'm still getting over this horrible cough. So that's my deep stash, which leads us on to the last couple of sections of the podcast. You'll be thankful if you're not a fan of long podcasts. If you like long podcasts, we're getting near the end, and I'm sorry. A couple of people have invited me or given me permission to talk about some techniques on my podcast. Now, I know I do the technique videos, and I don't want there to be too much blurring of the lines between what's podcast and what's technique videos. But firstly, to Laurie, whose full Ravelry name I can't remember, but this is just an apology, this is not the section. She's invented a type of bind-off which is really stretchy, involving a twist of the needle, and it looks quite intriguing. And she's asked me if I will try it out and see what I think. She'd be interested to get feedback. So I thought I'd do it on the podcast, and I hadn't had time to do it, and I haven't had time to set it up for. I don't think I'll knit it on the podcast, but certainly talking about it on the podcast. So I haven't had the chance to. So that's coming, Laurie, and I will do it. But Michael Dworjan, who is becoming a good friend of mine on Ravelry, his name is Apteno Knits, APTENOKNITS, Apteno Knits, Michael Dworjan. He's a New Yorker, one of my favourite cities, and he's a brilliant double knitting designer. Yeah, I'm very grateful to him for his feedback and input on a lot of things. He knows what I'm talking about. I was talking about different bind-offs to match different cast-ons, and the standard long-tail alternating cast-on for double knitting doesn't really have a bind-off that matches it. Well, he's come up with something which is pretty close, and it's really interesting. So he's shown me how to do it, and I've had a play. To be honest, I'm not sure I did it right. I think I might have messed it up a bit. But I've got the tiniest little swatch. Here's the cast-on edge. Now, with this type of cast-on, you get a little line of pearl bumps in the contrasting colour. Some people don't like this. I think it's a nice decorative touch. You see the white bumps on the green side and the green bumps on the white side, but the edge of it, as you can see, is really, really neat and tidy, and it's lovely. It's a very sturdy cast on, very simple. If you're used to the long tail cast on, this is a slight variation on that, and it's something I'm sure you'd pick up very quickly. Now here's what the bind off looks like, which ain't bad from the side. You see it's got the line of pearl bumps there, and on the other side line of pearl bumps that pretty much match up. That's not bad at all. My problem with it, this is where I think I may have got it wrong, so Michael, I apologise, is the top edge is really rather sort of thick and bulky. You see how that isn't quite the same as this sort of neat and tidy opening. Now I'm not sure it's possible to get that, so if this is as close as it gets, then bravo, Michael. So he's calling it Michael's reverse stocking stitch bind off, I think, because it's done with using the contrasting colours, and instead of doing a knitted bind off where you knit 2 stitches and pass one over and knit the next and pass it over and knit the next and pass it over. You actually keep the yarns for, if you double knit before, you'll know that the yarns usually work backwards and forwards together, but for reverse stocking stitch you split them, so you have one at the front and one at the back. Now if you make sure you've got, on the white side, make sure you bring the green to the front, and on the green side put the white to that side, then you work the bind off with purling a green one at the front and knitting a white one at the back, and then passing over, then purling a green one, passing one over, knitting a white one, which is a purl stitch on the back. It's actually a lot more straightforward than I'm making it sound, but it's great. I mean, it's good and it's nice and stretchy. It matches the cast on in stretch really, which is brilliant, and it's not a bad partnership. It's quite attractive in its own right, definitely. So let's get Michael's name out there as the innovator of this, because I think it's very useful, and I think it's certainly a useful first step towards finding a true match. He knows it's not 100%, so I'm not saying anything out of turn. And I think I may have done something not quite right to get that bulky edge there. But so Michael, very, very well done, and I look forward to seeing more of your experiments in due course, and maybe sort of playing around with this one a little bit as well, and maybe we can come up with something together. That would be kind of fun, wouldn't it? Your inspiration, me following it through, batting it back to you to tidy it up again. Yeah, but that might work very nicely. And let's see if we can get something perfect. So that is Michael's, I forget exactly what he's calling it, it's terrible. Michael's reverse stocking stitch cast off or bind off, I think. Michael, well done. Which leads me on to our final section for the day. It's historic FOs. I don't have a real one, so I've got a historic one. I've shown you so much double knitting, I thought it was time to go into the history books of my other styles of knitting. Now, as you know, I like innovating like traditional things and giving them a sort of modern or technological application. That's why I want to do a Sanka scarf in double knitting rather than stranded. That's why I've knitted the iPhone cozy with the traditional Sanka patterns. So I wanted to knit an iPad case. This was long before I bought this young chap here. I think I always knew I was going to buy one, and I wanted to come up with a case. I've got obsessed with QR codes. Now for those people who don't know what QR code is, it's those square barcodes made up of little dots of squares that you can scan with a smartphone, and they take you to web pages and things like that. And I came up with the idea of thinking, wouldn't it be great to have a knitted QR code on the front of a case that you could scan and it would actually work and take you somewhere? Well, it's possible. And here's my case here with the QR code on it. Now this is a real QR code. It genuinely works, and if you scan it, it takes you to my website. I get so pathetically excited by the tech geekery involved in that. I'm going to try and demonstrate it. I am going to try and show you. I've got my little scanner on the iPad here. It's kind of difficult, so let me take the case off here. So you can see this is the camera's working. So let me see if I can hold this up and show you what happens. Where is it? There we go. See if I can get it. This is impossible. Let me look at it this way. See if I can get it to scan. Oh, it's doing it. It's doing it. Can you see on screen? Look at that! That's my website. So there you go. Live demonstration. It genuinely works. But it's only on one side. The back flap has a nice little stranded motif there and a little button flap closure. It's knitted all in the round. I did a Judy Becker's magic cast on across the bottom, which is brilliant, and went straight into the round, knitting up. Now, how did I get this? It's not embroidered on, it's not applique or anything like that. It's genuinely knitted as one piece. And because it's kind of a bit stranded and a bit like intarsia, because it's colour work that doesn't go all the way round, and I didn't want to carry the yarns all the way round. If you can see from the inside, that's what the inside of the QR code looks like, but the rest is just standard stocking stitch in the black yarn. So I developed well, I'm sure someone else has done it, but I developed what worked for me, the concept of what I call strand-tasha. It's kind of a bit stranded and kind of a bit intarsia. And it's quite complex. It involves quite a lot of slipping stitches backwards and forwards and knitting backwards and knitting one pass with just one colour and then slipping them back. But it works. It really, really works. And the results are just so joyful. In the pattern, I have instructions on how you can create your own QR code. You don't have to worry about dots and things. There's things online where you can create your own barcode, QR code, so it will scan to whatever you want it to, your own website, your own blog, or Ravelry, or your favourite website, or whatever it is. So and blank templates that you can colour in from what you get given from that process. You can colour it in and make your very own Strand-tasha iPad case. This is called the I-Square, and it's pronounced I-Square, but it's spelt I-S-Q-R, which is of course the QR code, I-Square. So that's what this is, because it has a square on the front, which is a QR code. It was well thought through, and I really enjoyed making it. It is all completely in one piece. You just keep going all the way round and round and round until you get to the top. You start doing some ribbing here. Can you see that in the light? Yeah, just about. Do some, there we are, ribbing across the top. Bind off across one side and then keep working backwards and forwards. This does require stranding on the purl side, which some people don't like. I realise that most people would rather strand in a circle and then steek perhaps, but there's not much of it. It didn't take me too long. It's all quite neat and tidy on the back, though I do say so myself. I'm not a stranded knitter. My tension is awful, which is why it slightly bows in and puckers a little bit, but it works. So that's my I-Square, and that's my historic finished object. And this podcast is also now a finished object. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, tell your friends. Join up, sign up, chat, engage, interact with me as much as you possibly can. I'll do my best to get back to you as soon as I possibly can. I love hearing your stories. I love hearing seeing your knitted objects, all of that kind of stuff. So let's do that. Let's meet up here in 2 weeks' time. And until then, happy knitting. Take your life one stitch at a time and have a wonderful time.